Hey guys, quick heads up before I start the video. The link down below takes you to my Patreon, where you can download the project files for this video. Also gain access to my premium tutorials and in-depth courses where we build games together from start to finish. Check out my Patreon below, gain direct access to years of experience so that you can start working on your dream game tomorrow. Alright guys, welcome back to a new video. So in the last video we set up all of these levels. We set up the logic that we can go from the boot screen to the main menu. And we set up some boot screen UI and some main menu UI. So to quickly show you, if I start the boot screen here, hit play, we'll see a nice boot screen animation. And then we are in the main menu where we can click these default buttons that we have made, and we can click exit to quit the game. So in this video we are going to continue on this, and we are going to be making the actual main menu widgets. So we're going to be creating a create screen widget, also known as a host screen widget, and we're going to be making the server browser widget. So let's go ahead and make that. So inside of the main menu folder, we see that there is a base button. Let's actually make a separate folder and call this base, and inside of the base folder we want all the base widgets that can be reusable throughout our game. So when moving around these types of widgets or any assets in our engine, let's say I have the character animations, I'm just dragging this to other folders, then sometimes you will get that your redirectors, so if you right click on the content folder, sometimes your redirectors will get messed up because they will have wrong references and paths to these assets basically. So in order to ensure that you always have the correct paths and references like that, we every now and then when moving assets around, we want to right click the content browser, click on fix up redirectors. You'll see Unreal do a tiny little thing or a bigger thing if you got a massive project, and then hit save all, and that's it. So first off, we're going to create our little host game screen. So for that, inside of the main menu folder here, we're going to make something and call it sessions. And then we're going to open this one up, and we're going to create a widget here, user widget called WB create game. So that's the first one that we want. So to get started here, we are first going to be dragging in a border. Then we're going to click full screen, desired on screen again. And then inside of the border, we are going to drag a little vertical box. And then the vertical box, we're going to give it some space all around. So we're going to give it a padding of, let's say, 20, so that it has some space all around. And then the border, let's actually wrap this one. So if you go right click, wrap size box, and then we're going to give it a default size. So the width, let's do 400, and the height, let's set it to something like 600 for now. But this would kind of be the widget. It's a bit tall, maybe. Let's do 400 by 500 for now. Then we click on the border. We're going to give this a different color. So make it something gray like this. Something darker gray. There we go. Okay, next up, inside our vertical box, we're going to put some text. And we're going to call this our create game text. So that it shows what this widget is all about. And then what we need is we need the ability to set how many players you want to host, and we need the ability to set whether you want to use LAN or not, and then we need a button to actually click that we want to create this session. So let's go ahead and set up a text box in this case. So drag in a text box here. Then we're going to right click the text box, and we're going to be wrapping it with a vertical box. On top of this text box, we want some text. So we're going to drag some text on top here, and we're going to make this one say max player amount. We're going to make it a bit smaller, something like 16. Then we want some spacing in between this text and this input box here. So we're going to select the top text and get some padding down, let's say 20. We also want some space in between here, let's say 5. And then we see that our editable text box became very thin. So we're going to right click it, wrap it with a size box. And we're going to give it a size of, let's say, a height of 40, so that we got a nice size to work with. Okay, so that's it for this. Then we're going to select our editable text box and call this the player amount text player amount underscore text box. We're going to set a hint text here of, let's say, 20 players. And then we can barely read it. So we're going to click here, make it all the way dark. Click here, make it all the way dark. Click here, make it all the way dark. We're also going to put some more padding on the left. Let's say 10 padding. And we're going to size up the font to 15. Or actually, let's do 14. Hit compile and save. Then it might mess up your font. If that happens, then we need to select the font family here. If you don't see it, click on the wheel here. Click on show engine content and then select the Roboto text. Then we can hit the wheel again and hide the engine content again. There we go. Okay, so that's great. Next up, we want another one of these vertical boxes. So we're going to right click it and duplicate. Then we want some space between these vertical boxes. So we're going to select the first one, do 15 space in between, or actually let's do 20. Now this time we want the text to say session type. And then what we want here is not a size box with an input box, but we want a checkbox. So what we're going to put in is a horizontal box. Next up, we will put in a size box. And then inside of the size box, we want a checkbox. And then we want some text next to the checkbox. So inside of the horizontal box, we want some more text. And we want this to say LAN, question mark, whether or not we want to enable LAN. Then we see that the checkbox is very small here. So if we select it, we can give the default height and width of, let's say, 40. And then the checkbox itself, we can set it in the center like this. And then we see that it doesn't actually scale up. So the reason it doesn't scale up is you probably have to do it with these skills over here. So if we click here, then we can do 25 by 25. Yeah, that's better. So let's make it 25 by 25. Copy this one. Actually, yeah, copy this one. And then we can set it to all of these sizes. So hold shift, right click to copy, and then shift left click to paste it. So now we're gonna just paste this size everywhere. Just like that. All right, and that's it. Then we can actually rename it. So the checkbox, we want to say enable LAN question mark underscore checkbox. And this font is very big, so let's make it something like 16. I put it in the middle here. Okay, and that's that. It doesn't look the prettiest, but you guys can style all of this yourself. I'm just showing you guys the functionality of how to make this multiplayer game. Then the last thing that we need is our button. So we already made these base buttons. So we're going to drag one of those in. And then we want some padding in between here as well. But let's do this time something like 35 padding. And then we see that the widget kind of got its own size by now. So if we then select the top size box, we can then remove the height override, just like this, so that it will basically just fixate its height on whatever the actual height of the content is. Now we do see that our button becomes very thin here as well. So we're going to wrap that guy with a little size box and give it also an override height, I mean, of let's say 40. And we want the text in this button to be create game. And this is fine. All right. So that is this widget. We can then go ahead and start to code this widget. But before we do that, let's set up some more widgets. So let's actually set up the whole server browser stuff so that we can also join. So for this, we're going to click on the browse here to bring us back to where this widget is located. Then we're going to duplicate this whole widget, because there's a bunch of stuff in there that we can reuse. And we're going to call this the server browser, just like that. And then we're going to make a new widget as well. And we're going to call this one the server browser item, so underscore item. So this will basically be the results that we will find in the server browser. So if you click in the server browser, if you click refresh, then we want the server browser to populate itself with these children. So let's go ahead and open up the server browser and actually create the UI that we need for this. So we do not need this session stuff. We do also not need this player amount. So So we're going to remove this one as well. We want to change the text here to server browser. Or actually, let's call it find game, right? Because that's what this widget is all about. And then we do still want a button, but this time we want the button to be, let's put it right next to here so that we can refresh the server browser. That's what we want to use this for. So to do that, we're going to just remove this one. We're going to right click the find game here and then wrap it with a horizontal box. And then next to the text here, we want to have the refresh button. So if we go to user created, drag in our base class, and then we're going to make this say refresh, just like that. We want to put it all the way to the right. So if we select the text, we can then click on fill to push it over. And then we do not want it to be this, basically not wide. We don't want it to be this width. We want it to be way wider. So we're going to put it to something like 600, or actually let's do 650. Hit compile and save. Okay, so when we click refresh, we want a server list here to actually populate with those children that I was talking about. So with server browser items, and those are the sessions that we will find that we will be able to join. So inside of the vertical box, we're going to need ourselves a scroll box over here, just like that. And then the scroll box, we want to always show the scroll bar. So let's always show that. And we want to rename this one to say, server list underscore sb, which stands for scroll box. Let's make that a variable. And then we actually want to rename this button here as well to be our refresh underscore button. So there we go. Then we see that this is not really a big widget. So what we do want to do in this case is give it a default height, because this widget's height is not going to be determined by the content like this, because that would mean that the widget would actually scale in real time. So this one, we do want to give it a default height of, let's say, something like 700 might be a bit big. What about 500? Yeah, this is fine. And then if we select our server list, then we do want it to fill so that it's automatically filled in just like that. That's it for this. Then we are going to create those children that go inside of here. So if we go over here back to our content browser, then we can double click the server browser item. And let's go ahead and make this. So first of all, we are going to need a size box. So we're going to be using a default height for this. Let's set our screen to desired on screen and give this a height of 40 to start with. We'll see if that's a nice height in a little bit. Then we're going to drag in a border. We're going to give that a color. So I'm going to use this color here first. So if we click this, Control copy, then go over here. Then we click here and Control paste. Now we don't want it to be the exact same size as the server browser, because then we won't be able to see it. So we are just going to be making it a bit lighter. That would be nice. Hit compile and save. And then inside of here, we are going to need a horizontal box. And we're going to fill this horizontal box with some items. So the first item that we need is going to be our text. And we're going to put all of these items inside of the size box to determine a width for us. So first of all, put a size box in here and then put some text inside of the size box. And we want this text to say session name, because that's what it's going to be displaying. And let's make it a size of 14. And make sure that this whole size box is actually centered in the middle. And then the size that we want to give this one, let's say that we want this one to be 150. Or actually a bit bigger, let's say 350. Next up, we're going to duplicate this size box. Then this one here, we wanted to show. Check out Cactus Center right now on Steam and Early Access. It's a very fun multiplayer video game, cheaper than a Starbucks coffee. So if you want to have a good time with your friends or strangers, click that link down below. And I appreciate every single one of you. And enjoy the rest of the video. Bye. We want this one to show our player amount. So let's type in like 8 out of 20. So that's how many players we have inside of the session. And behind this, we can still type players. So 8 out of 20 players. Then we want to show our ping, so our latency. So we can type 100 ms. Let's do it like this, 100 ms. We don't want that one to be this big. So let's put this to a size of 150. And then the player size here, actually, let's put that to 250, maybe 200, something like that. And then the last item that we're going to need, so duplicate the size box one more time, is not going to be text, but you guessed it, it's going to be a join button. So drag in our base button again, and then we're going to make this say join game. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. So we do see that we might need a bit more padding all around the board. So if we select our horizontal box, then we can say, let's put a default padding of 8. And since we have the height here, we can actually now also conclude that we don't want to override the height anymore, because it will automatically be determined based on these elements right now. So that's it for this one. And then these items are going to be going into this list, and we do want some padding in between these items here. But before we do that, let's go ahead and make sure that all of these items can be set in runtime. So the session name, first of all, let's make this a variable and then make it call it session name underscore text, promote it to variable. Then the player amount here, we're going to call it the player amount underscore text, promote this to variable. Then our latency or MS, or what do we call it? Our ping underscore text, we want that to be a variable. And this is going to be our join game underscore button. Hit compile and save. All right, then we go back to our server browser and let's try to put one of those children inside of here. So if we got the item here, we can drag it in the server list to preview it. Now, obviously we see that it gets cut off a lot, and that is because we have set a width here. So if we remove the width here, then we'll see that the widget will automatically adjust itself to the size of this child, which is better. But then what we don't want is that if we don't have a child, that it looks like this. So to fix that, we're going to set like a default width, and then it's just going to change itself a little bit. So we're going to set a minimum desired width. I don't know really how much. Typically, you would actually look at this child element and you would calculate all the padding here, and then come to an actual size that it would be. So you can do that as well. We're basically just gonna take a look here at all of the padding. So we got 8 on the left, 8 on the right, which makes 16. And then we got 350. So 350 plus 200 makes 550, plus 150 makes 700, plus 150 makes 850, plus 16. So then we got our size. So then we can go back here. So the minimum desired size was, what was it? 850 plus 16, which makes 866. So right now, if we drag in another of the server browser items in here, then yeah, it still sizes up a little bit, but that's fine. The reason it sizes up is because obviously this widget also has its default padding here and here and here. So you would also need to add the paddings of all of this to make it actually perfectly sized. So for now, let's just call it 900 and call it a day. Then we're going to duplicate this item to see what that looks like. And then we see the problem that I talked about earlier. So we do want some padding in between here. Since these are items, we cannot select these and just do padding here, because this is all going to be done in runtime. This is all going to be dynamic, so we cannot just set it here. So we remove these children again and then hit compile and save. Then what we want to do is that we want to wrap this child with another little size box. And then once we do that and click this second size box, we now see the option to do some padding. So we want a bit of padding on the bottom of, let's say, 15. So now we got some space in between. If we then go back to the server browser, we can drag in our item and we will see that there is some nice padding in between the items. So this is basically what it will look like if you go to the server browser, click on refresh, and then over here you will see your items appearing, and then you can basically join the sessions. And this is what it looks like when you want to create the sessions. So before we start and code this, I want to do that in the next video. We are going to be adding them to the main menu now, so that the whole loop is round. So if we go back here to the content browser, go back in our main menu widget. Then we want to make it so that when we click create game, we actually see the create game panel. And when we click find game, we want to see the find game panel. Now in Unreal Engine, there is plenty of ways to do this, but we are going to be using a simple widget switcher. So what we're going to do is that we're actually going to be wrapping this whole vertical box with a widget switcher. So to do that, we drag it into the viewport here. And then we're going to put the vertical box inside of it. And then this guy is going to be the one now responsible for everything. So what we can do is we can actually anchor this widget switcher to be full screen. So let's do that. So we go control click, shift click. Then we see that it has a weird name. So let's just rename it to widget switcher. Compile, save. Now we see that our widget is a bit messed up in here. So if we click the vertical box, we then want to align it to the left and to the center. And then we want to give it that padding that I had before of 100 again. So there we go. And then, yeah, so this is going to be index 0 of the widget switcher. Now the next one is going to be our create game screen here. So we're going to grab our user created widget create game screen, drag it into the widget switcher. It is now located here. And we're going to do the same for the server browser, drag it into the widget switcher, and it's now located here. Now if we start to click these items, it will automatically switch so that we can preview what this looks like. So for the create game screen, we want it to be centered. So we're just going to click center, just like that. And for the server browser, we want it to be centered as well, just like that. And then we do see that we now lost our controls on the left here. So we do want to get our controls back. So what we're going to be making is a little button under here for both the server browser and the create game screen to take us back to this first screen here. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to go to the create game screen. And then we see that we have this whole item here. We're going to wrap this whole item with a vertical box. And then we're going to drag in our base button. And it needs to have some space. So we're going to select the item here, the size box, give it some padding, let's say 15. And this button can be aligned to the left. And we want it to say back. Or you can also say return. Depends on what you prefer. I prefer back. So then we're going to rename this button to back button. And then as we learned in the previous video, we can then basically have this button's on click event, just like this. But this time we want to return this on click event one layer back even more to the main menu here, so that we can actually have an event over here for when we click this back button. So we're going to go from an event dispatcher to another event dispatcher to be able to get that communication all the way back to the main menu here. So we're going to make a new event dispatcher and call this onClicked back underscore button. And we're going to drag that in and attach it to the onClicked of the actual base back button. And then hit compile and save. There we go. Now we need to do the same for the server browser. So we're going to wrap the server browser in a vertical box over here. Then we're going to drag in a base button. There we go. We're going to put some padding in between here again, 15. We're going to make the base button say back again. We're going to rename it to back button. We're going to put it to the left. We're going to go all the way down, click on onClicked, make a new event dispatcher, onClicked back button. Hit compile and save. We want to attach this event here, just like that. And to be more clear, because now we called this one onClick back button, and we did the same for the create game screen. So we actually want to give this a bit of a clearer name. So let's say onClicked back server browser, and then we want the one for the host screen to also say that. So we want this one to say onClicked back create game. So then we have a bit of a difference here. All right, we can remove these events, put this nice to the top. That's it. Now back in our main menu, we then can click on the create game screen and we see the back event, and we see the back event here as well. So now we go ahead and code these buttons to actually go and switch to the corresponding widgets here. So when we click on the create game button, we want to get that event and then we want to do something. So what is it that we want to do? Well, we want to get our widget switcher, so this one, and that is this one over here. We grab it, drag it into the graph, and then we want to set the active index. So set active widget index. And then the widget index that we want to set it to when we click create game. So this one is that we want to set it to to index 1. So in Unreal, indexes have a 0 count, right? So this is index 0, index 1, index 2. So when we click create, we want to go to index 1. So we put that in here. And then for the find game button, we want to switch it not to index 1, but to index 2. And then we also need to handle these back button events. So for the create game, if we click on the back button, we then want it to go to index 0. But also for the server browser, if we click the back button, we also want this one, to go to index 0. So both of these guys can go into the same event, which will be index 0. And then we can basically put a little comment around this. I call this navigation controls. And let's put it like this. Hit compile, save. And let's go ahead and test this out. So if we hit play, we see the main menu. The reason we directly see the main menu is because we got the main menu level loaded up. So let's do it all from the boot screen. We hit play. We see our little animation. We then go into the main menu. I'm going to click full screen now. I can then click on the create game screen, which brings us here. I have the ability to type. I can click on this set LAN checkbox, yes and no. I can click the create button, but nothing happens yet. I can then click on back to bring us back. So we can do it like this. And then I can click find game here. And we got our beautiful server browser. And we can also go back here. And the last thing is that we can click the exit button, which quits our game. Alright guys, that is going to be it for this video. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, then be sure to check out the project files available on my Patreon, link down below. In the next video, we are going to actually be coding these widgets. So we're going to be making sure that we create a session. We want to find sessions, then join sessions. The sessions will bring us from the main menu connected to other players inside of the Battle Royale. And then once we are in the Battle Royale, we also want to have the functionality to leave the session again. And we're also going to be handling traveling errors and network errors for when the clients or the server has some difficulties with his internet, that we handle the disconnecting as well properly. So that's up for the next video. See you guys later and appreciate all of you. Bye.